This is the Education Business Podcast for all founders and business owners in the education sector. This podcast is for you if you have an education business or you're thinking about starting one. That could be tutoring, publishing, holiday clubs. It really doesn't matter. You're in business and you're also in education. But most of all, you're focused on improving outcomes for children in the way you know best, through your business. I'm Claire Riley, co-founder of educational resources website Classroom Secrets, and I'll be sharing how to make your education business bigger, better, and have more impact through my own experiences and also the conversations I have with other founders and business owners in education. The Education Business Podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets, helping you to support your children's learning. How do you know what questions to ask people when you are interviewing them to hire them? So recently there was a post on LinkedIn and I gave some feedback and they said, we had a conversation and we knew, Claire, that you would have some great insights, and I thought that would make a great podcast for everyone. So what is it then that I ask when I'm going to interview somebody? Well, each to their own. I think when you first hire somebody, you think you know what you want and you can go with that. You have to go with that. But over time, you get a better idea of what you really want. And actually, I find that the best questions come from the mistakes you've made in the past. So you have to be careful because you don't want to bring rules or guidelines in based on other people's behaviour. Like, you do have to be careful with that. So we've been around the houses sometimes where, you say that the working's flexible, but then somebody does that hours, for a whole week over a weekend and it doesn't work because everybody's got the resources late and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that was a long time ago. So you have to really think about making sure that it's a sensible change. But yet the best questions come from things that have happened in the past, things that you've realised you don't want. So it's not that you would necessarily ask a question about that particular thing, but you ask a question which helps you understand where this person's mindset is. Many entrepreneurs will say that they prefer to hire attitude over experience, and I'm the same. Obviously, for certain roles, you need a certain level of experience. We've definitely swung it too much the other way and it's been unhelpful. But if you have somebody with the wrong attitude, then it just creates a toxic environment. And another tip that I think is useful, when I first started hiring, I kind of kept lots of things back and expected them to just know. Now, obviously, you can overshare. You can give them too much information and make it too easy so that they don't have to do any research. But I've found being upfront to be really, really helpful. Don't hold back with information. Think about what they would actually need to be successful. Sometimes we want them to know our internal processes without actually telling them and expect them to perform for that. And that's obviously difficult. It is so difficult to hire and find the right person. But I always find coming up with scenarios as well. So if you know that there has been a problem with a specific hire, I would bring that into the conversation. So let me make up an example. Say, for example, you were wanting to hire another tutor, and one of the things that you've found is that you've had a tutor or a couple of tutors in the past that didn't want to go over and above and reply any time outside of the tutoring time. I'm sure that's not the case, but it could happen. And you know that that's not right for you. Then you can frame a question such as, it's really important to me that we're working cohesively as a team and we respect each other's flexibility. There are times, though, quite commonly, where we need to make sure that we are replying to each other's messages, even at those times when we're not tutoring, so we can keep moving things forward. And obviously, I respect that people have other things going on, like they're doing supply and other teaching roles. But for this business to work, we need to make sure that we keep that momentum. So can you give me some examples of where you've worked with other people to keep things moving, even though it's felt difficult from a time perspective? And what has the impact of that been? So what you're doing in that question is you're telling them what's not acceptable so that they know If they don't want to work in that kind of environment, they want it to be very hours focused, they clock on, they clock off. And, a lot of ex-teachers do want that in the beginning because they see that as protecting themselves from what they faced in teaching. And sometimes teachers will need a lot of support to get out of that mindset, and maybe you're not the person to be able to give that support, especially if you've got a small company. But you're telling them what it is that you don't want, and you're also asking them to think about how they could apply that mindset and how they've applied that mindset in the past. So I hope that helps. Your best questions come from the mistakes that have happened in your business, or the things that you found difficult, or where processes have stopped and fallen over because you haven't had the right team members or you haven't had the right shared thinking. So if you're hiring, I'd love to know if this tip helped. Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets. To find more resources to grow your business, visit classroomsecrets.co.uk.